Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. It started on one of those rainy afternoons when the air inside the house felt warmer than it should. The faint scent of soap and rain drifted from the bathroom down the hallway, and I was just folding the laundry when I heard a quiet knock on my bedroom door. Sorry, can I borrow a towel?" His voice came from the other side, hesitant, deep, unsure. I turned around, towel still in my hand, just as the door creaked open. He stepped in before I could answer, wet hair dripping, gray shirt clinging to his shoulders. For a moment, neither of us said anything. The sound of rain outside filled the silence between us. Our eyes met. His gaze lingered longer than it should have, sliding from my face to the towel I was holding, then back to me. I felt my heart give a quick, traitorous thump. "You could have just waited," I said softly, half teasing, half flustered. He gave a nervous laugh, scratching the back of his neck. "Didn't think you'd be here." "Well, I am," I replied, stepping closer to hand him the towel. My fingers brushed his, just for a second, but that second stretched endlessly. I could feel the warmth of his skin, the electricity of being too close. Neither of us moved away. The rain outside grew heavier, drowning out everything else. His breathing slowed, matching mine. There was something unspoken in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes. I tried to steady my voice. "You should dry off before you catch a cold." He nodded, but his eyes said something different. Something that made my pulse skip again. And just as I turned to step back, the towel slipped from his hand, brushing softly against my leg. He bent to pick it up, but paused, eyes lifting toward me again. For a heartbeat, time stood still. The door remained half open, the storm rumbling beyond the windows. I didn't know whether to step away, or stay still and see what he would do next. Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. After that afternoon, things shifted in ways neither of us dared to talk about. The house felt quieter, as if every sound echoed a little longer: the footsteps in the hallway, the clink of dishes, even the soft hum of the refrigerator. Everything seemed to carry a charge, something unspoken floating between us. He started helping around the house more, fixing the dripping faucet, bringing in the groceries, lingering just a moment too long when we passed each other. It wasn't anything inappropriate, but it wasn't entirely innocent either. The air between us was alive with something we didn't name. I had raised him for years after marrying his father, a kind man, though distant lately. His work took him out of town often, and the quiet stretches between his visits grew longer. Sometimes I wondered if loneliness had a scent, that faint trace of cologne that lingered even after he'd gone. And now, with the house mostly empty, I found myself noticing small things I shouldn't. The way he, my stepson, smiled when he thought I wasn't looking. The way his voice had deepened, or how he always seemed to appear just when I needed help. One evening, I was cooking dinner when he walked in, sleeves rolled up, his hair still damp from a shower. "Need a hand?" he asked, reaching for the chopping board before I could say no. Our fingers brushed again, like before, just enough to stir that quiet ache inside me. I pulled back quickly, pretending to focus on the stove. "You're getting better at this," I said, forcing a light tone. He chuckled softly. "Guess I've had a good teacher." The words lingered in the air longer than they should have. I looked up, and our eyes met, steady, searching. I turned away, feeling that familiar warmth crawl up my neck. It wasn't supposed to feel like this, the heartbeat quickening at the sound of his laugh, the subtle glances across the dinner table. Maybe it was just the emptiness of the house that made everything feel louder, sharper. Or maybe, deep down, there were things neither of us had the courage to admit. Late that night, I passed by his room to turn off a forgotten light. The door was slightly open, and he was sitting by the window, looking out at the rain. The glow from the lamp traced the edges of his face, quiet, thoughtful. He turned, eyes meeting mine, and smiled softly. Couldn't sleep either? I hesitated at the doorway, my voice barely above a whisper. No. It's the rain. He nodded, and for a long moment, we just stood there, two people caught in something neither of us could name. Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The rain had stopped the next morning, but the air inside the house still felt heavy, like a storm waiting to happen. I could feel it in the silence between us, in the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. That morning, I found him in the kitchen making coffee. He was wearing one of his father's old shirts, the one I used to fold every Sunday. It hung loosely on him, and for a second, I couldn't breathe. Memories tangled with the present in ways I didn't want to understand. "Morning," he said, offering me a mug. His voice had that calm, sleepy tone that somehow felt too intimate. "Thanks," I replied, taking it from his hand. My fingers brushed his again, another small accident that didn't feel accidental anymore. Then he asked it, quietly, almost testing the air. "Does Dad ever call these days?" I hesitated. "Not much," I admitted. "He's been busy." He nodded slowly, eyes meeting mine. There was no judgment in them, just something I couldn't name, something that made my chest tighten. Later that day, I caught him talking on the phone, laughing softly. A girl's name slipped from his lips, Maya. I don't know why it made my stomach twist. I had no right to feel that sting of jealousy, yet it was there, fierce and undeniable. When he noticed me standing by the door, he smiled, unaware of the thoughts swirling in my head. "Oh, hey. Just talking to a friend." "Of course," I said, forcing a smile. "You should invite her over sometime." But even I could hear the edge in my voice. He seemed to sense it too. That night, at dinner, the air between us crackled again. His hand brushed mine as he passed the salt, and neither of us moved for a long moment. Our eyes locked, a quiet challenge, a shared secret. He leaned in slightly, voice low. "You sure you're okay?" I swallowed, feeling my pulse quicken. "Yes," I whispered. Why wouldn't I be? The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full of everything we weren't saying. Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. That weekend, the power went out just before midnight. The rain had returned, harder this time, hammering the roof while thunder rolled through the hills. The house was wrapped in darkness, only the faint glow of candles flickered across the walls. I was in the living room, trying to light another candle, when I heard footsteps behind me. He appeared in the doorway, flashlight in hand, the soft beam cutting through the shadows. "Looks like we're stuck in the dark," he said, smiling faintly. I tried to sound calm. "I've handled worse nights." He stepped closer, setting the flashlight on the table so its light spilled between us. The space felt smaller suddenly, the silence thicker. I could hear the steady rhythm of the rain outside, and his breathing, slow, steady, close. "Do you ever get scared?" he asked quietly. "Of storms?" I managed a laugh. "Not really." He took another step closer. "That's not what I meant." For a moment, I couldn't speak. The flickering light played across his face, making his eyes glow in the dimness. I could feel every inch of the space between us shrinking, pulsing with the tension we both pretended not to notice. I turned toward the window, trying to steady my voice. "You should get some sleep. It's late." He didn't move. "I can't. Not when it feels like this." "Feels like what?" He didn't answer right away. Just looked at me, really looked. The kind of look that stripped away every layer of politeness, leaving only truth and confusion tangled together. Lightning flashed outside, bright enough to light up the whole room for a heartbeat. When it faded, he was standing just a breath away. The candle flickered between us, the flame bending toward him as if drawn by the same pull I felt inside. I should have stepped back. Said something, anything. But instead, I froze, caught between what was right and what my heart refused to let go of. Then the thunder cracked, loud, startling, and the candle went out. The room plunged into darkness. Only our breathing filled the space. Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. When the candle went out, the darkness between us became something alive, heavy, breathing, aware. The storm outside roared louder, but even that couldn't drown out the sound of my own heartbeat. Then, without warning, the power flickered back on. The lights buzzed, flooding the room with sudden brightness that felt almost cruel. We both froze, eyes wide, caught in a moment that wasn't meant to be seen. He took a small step back, running a hand through his hair, trying to collect himself. I could see the conflict written all over his face: confusion, guilt, longing. It mirrored my own. "I shouldn't have," he began, his voice low, unsteady. But before he could finish, the front door opened. My husband's voice echoed through the hallway. "Hello? Anyone home?" The sound sliced through the air like lightning. I stepped back instantly, heart racing. My husband walked in, drenched from the rain, his eyes scanning the room, the candles, the half-lit space, the tension hanging thick and unspoken. He looked from me to his son, then back again. Something shifted in his expression: suspicion, realization. "What's going on here?" he asked, voice calm but sharp. "Nothing," I said too quickly. The lights went out. "We were just what?" he interrupted. Silence. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly. My stepson's jaw tightened, his hands curling at his sides. "She didn't do anything wrong," he said finally. "It's my fault." His father's eyes darkened. "What do you mean, your fault?" He hesitated, then took a step forward. "I shouldn't have stayed here. I should have gone upstairs. But I didn't." He stopped himself, looking at me, regret flashing in his eyes. I could see the truth trembling on his lips, something he wanted to confess but couldn't. Something that would destroy everything if spoken aloud. My husband's gaze lingered between us, his breathing heavy. "You too, hiding something from me?" "No," I whispered, though even to my own ears, it didn't sound convincing. The air crackled again, not from the storm, but from everything unsaid. My husband stared at us for a long, unbearable moment before turning away. "We'll talk in the morning," he muttered, his voice cold. He walked upstairs, each step echoing like a judgment. The silence that followed felt like punishment. My stepson stood there, eyes downcast, his shoulders tense. "I told you," he said quietly. "Something like this would happen." I turned away, holding back the tremor in my voice. "We can't undo what's already been seen." He looked at me, sadness and understanding in his eyes. "No," he said softly. "But maybe we can still make it right." Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The next morning, the storm had passed, but the silence that filled the house was far worse than thunder. The air was thick, heavy with what had been left unsaid. No one spoke during breakfast. The sound of the spoon against the cup felt deafening. My husband sat at the table, reading a newspaper he clearly wasn't seeing. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on nothing. My stepson avoided looking at either of us, the guilt practically written across his face. Finally, my husband set the paper down. "We need to talk," he said, his tone firm but low, the kind of voice that leaves no room for escape. I nodded. About last night. He looked at me for a long moment before turning to his son. You've been quiet lately. Too quiet. Then I come home to find you both standing in the dark like strangers caught doing something wrong. Tell me, what's really happening here? My stepson met his father's eyes, his voice trembling. Nothing happened. I swear. But maybe we should have set boundaries. Maybe I stayed too close. My husband's expression hardened. Boundaries? What are you implying? I'm saying I care about her, he blurted out, the words raw, honest, unstoppable. Not the way I should, but I do. The words hit like thunder all over again. I froze, the room spinning. My husband stood slowly, disbelief flashing in his eyes. Do you realize what you're saying? He asked, his voice shaking. That's your stepmother. I know, his son said, voice breaking. And I hate myself for it. But I can't pretend anymore. The silence that followed was unbearable. I could feel both of them, their anger, their pain, colliding in the air like fire and smoke. Tears welled up in my eyes. Stop, I whispered. Please, both of you. I turned to my husband, trembling. You've been gone so long. I didn't plan any of this. It just happened. The loneliness, the silence, it made me forget what love was supposed to feel like. He stared at me, eyes glistening, torn between fury and heartbreak. So this is my fault? No, I said quietly. It's no one's fault. But it's something we can't ignore anymore. My stepson took a deep breath. I'll go, he said finally. You don't deserve to see me again. I just needed you to know the truth. He turned toward the door, shoulders heavy, eyes wet with regret. I wanted to stop him, to say something, but all I could do was watch as he stepped outside, disappearing into the gray light of morning. The house fell silent once more. But this time, it wasn't storm clouds that darkened the sky, it was everything left broken behind. Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Weeks passed since that stormy night, and though the air in the house had calmed, the memories lingered like faint echoes. My husband had left for an extended business trip, his parting words quiet but forgiving. Take care of yourself, he had said, not looking back. It wasn't anger that remained, only a hollow distance. And then there was him. My stepson hadn't been home since that morning. Each room felt emptier without his quiet footsteps, without his laughter that once filled the silence. I tried to bury myself in routine, watering plants, reading, pretending life had returned to normal. But every time it rained, my chest tightened, remembering the night everything changed. Then one late afternoon, I heard a familiar sound, the creak of the front gate. My heart skipped. When I looked up from the kitchen window, he was there. Standing by the path, sunlight falling across his face, eyes soft with hesitation. I opened the door before he could knock. For a moment, we just stood there, no storm, no tension, only the quiet hum of the wind between us. I didn't think I'd be back here, he said, voice low. I didn't think you would either, I replied, a sad smile tugging at my lips. But I'm glad you did. He stepped closer, holding out a small bouquet of white daisies, my favorite. I wanted to say I'm sorry, for everything. For putting you through that. I took the flowers, my fingers brushing his. You don't need to apologize. We both lost ourselves for a moment. What matters is what we do next. He nodded, eyes glistening. Then I'd like to start over. Not as something we shouldn't be, but as two people who understand each other. A warm silence filled the space between us. The late afternoon light painted everything gold, the doorway, the dust in the air, the soft smile we both shared. I think we both needed time, I said softly. To remember what love really means, not confusion, not guilt, but care. Respect. Peace. He looked at me, a small hopeful smile breaking through. Then maybe this right now is our real beginning. I stepped closer, placing my hand gently over his. Maybe it is. Outside, the sky blushed in hues of orange and pink. The world felt lighter, as if the weight of everything had finally lifted. And for the first time in months, I felt calm, not from forgetting the past, but from forgiving it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, he whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I smiled. No one ever truly moves on when the heart remembers kindness.